waiting for the Buckeyes to break out. Welcome to the Voice of College Football as we talk Ohio State with Akron. Game 4 coming up Saturday at the Shoe. We got Pat Murphy on the line from Bucknuts. Joins us on a regular basis. Please join Pat on 247 Sports Bucknuts. Pat, how's it going today?
It's good. It's good. It's crazy to think we are a fourth of the way through this season already. I don't know. It feels like things are just getting started, and somebody pointed that out today on our site, and I was just amazed at how quickly these things go.
Yeah, college football season is a short one, 12 precious games, and Ohio State, of course, at 2-1, and got the win on Saturday. Not necessarily an impressive performance in certain categories. We'll point to the offense and CJ Stroud in particular. And for those people that look solely at statistics, of course, 484 yards passing, playing catch up against Oregon. This particular game, obviously, the run game was huge. CJ Stroud passes for $185, hits on 15 of 25. Still maybe some chinks in the armor, some things to clean up.
Absolutely. I think we're talking specifically about CJ Stroud first. I think that there is, a level of the bar has been raised when it came to Ohio State quarterbacks with the last two guys, Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, both guys, and Ryan Day also, obviously a big part of that, being quarterback coach and now the head coach. Both Haskins and Fields came in their first years starting for Ohio State. They were Heisman Trophy finalists. And I think that Buckeye fans expected, and rightfully so, that CJ Stroud would be similar to that level. And thus far, he hasn't been. It's been inconsistent from Stroud, I think is the best way to put it. A really good stat line at the end of the Minnesota game, but didn't have a good first half. Against Oregon, as you mentioned, a lot of that came trying to get back into the game, and he did get him back in the game, but couldn't finish on those final two drives. This week against Tulsa, the stat line does not look as good. 15 of 25 for, 185 yards, as you said, one touchdown, one interception. So it's just been a mixed bag for Stroud thus far. And I think there are a few things you can probably look at here. He's clearly dealing with something with the shoulder. And you see that during the games. He's flexing it a lot, especially after incompletions. His incompletions often are high, especially early in the game. And I think that's a sign of somebody who's not really following through because of shoulder pain. But both he and Ryan Day say he's healthy enough to play. And then I also think that he's still a young kid, and as much as Haskins and Fields were able to come in and do it right away, they both got some time in the offense the year before, and this excuse can only go on for so long. I mean, he's played in 3 games now. It's got to start happening on a more consistent basis. But I do like what I see when he does hit his targets. I like the accountability he's shown after games. He admitted after this game he's got to get better. He also talked about, and Ryan Day talked about it as well, that the Tulsa defense, they played a 3-3-5. They dropped 8 on almost every play. They let Ohio State run, which helped in the big run game performance. But it made it tough to throw, especially downfield. And you saw in the interception, CJ Stroud tried to force something to Jeremy Ruckert instead of taking something underneath, and it's an interception. So Tulsa's defense was I think, a part of it on Saturday. But you still expect a guy as good as Stroud, as good as we believe Stroud will be, to be able to handle a defense, even one that's a little bit trickier than maybe something he's seen in the first 2 games.
And on the play to Ruckert, that just doesn't appear to be, for as good as Jeremy Ruckert is, and I'm sure he's got a future in the NFL, that he's not the guy that you force one to that
Right.
needs to make a leaping catch. You do that to Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave, or a host of the rest of the guys. Looking at CJ Stroud as well, I was curious, but we never got there because the game was a touchdown game with 6 or 7 minutes left to play. If this was going to be a stretch of games, considering that CJ Stroud was, I'm not going to use the term struggling, but not a home run right out of the gate, and with the 4 and 5 stars on the bench, whether there was going to be some time split up to give the other quarterbacks opportunities, and if this was still a competition to a certain extent that would carry into the season.
I think Ryan Day's made it clear, and especially in a game like this, that it's not. I do think we will see Kyle McCord, Jack Miller at some point this season. Ohio State's a 53-point favorite against Akron next weekend. So, assuming things go to plan, I definitely think you'll see those guys in that game. And I thought you'd see them this week. I think there are other reasons, defensive issues and things like that allowed Tulsa to kind of hang around in that game more than most people expected. And I know Ryan Day wants to see these guys in game action, but he also doesn't want to create a quarterback controversy, I don't think. He still very much believes in CJ Stroud, and putting, Kyle McCord in or Jack Miller, whichever guy would be the next guy in, say the second quarter, now all of a sudden the talk isn't about, well, is CJ Stroud struggling? It's, well, does Ohio State have a starting quarterback and things like that? And, given Ryan Day's history as a quarterback, I think he understands kind of the psychological game that goes along with that, and kind of how you play that situation out. And again, I think he very much believes in CJ Stroud. I think he believes that as he continues to progress, he's going to get better and play up to the level expected of an Ohio State quarterback. So I don't think he wants to make this any sort of competition, any sort of debate by putting another guy in there when the game's still on the line. Now, Kyle McCord going in, I'm just using Kyle McCord as the example, going in late in the game, once it's the outcome is already decided. I definitely think that's something, and you can kind of build on your opinions of whoever then. But I definitely think that they're going to ride with CJ Stroud unless things get much worse.
Please like the video, share these videos out on social media, and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. We got Pat Murphy on the line, 247 Sports Bucknuts. Join him right there for Ohio State football coverage. The Buckeyes taking on Akron. All right, well, the defense, I wasn't as critical as apparently a lot of other people are, and you certainly take a ton of feedback, I'm sure, online about Ohio State's performance, but we do call-in shows here on Saturday, and everybody was ripping Stroud in the defense, of course. And I thought that they gave up some plays in the run game the first couple drives. They gave up a field goal, and the running game wasn't completely shut down for Tulsa. Then after that, it seemed like they stone cold shut down the running game. At one point late in the fourth quarter, I don't have the numbers right here, they were at a little over a yard per carry. They finished at 2.6 yards per carry. Davis Brin's stat line looks much like CJ Stroud's did the week before against Oregon, where he just had to throw it a million times. And so they gained a ton of yardage. And I'm not going to drop Ohio State defensive standards. They gave up 501 yards, but and you got to consider the adjustment in opponent. But still, I thought that they at least were making some plays on defense that they weren't making the game before.
I agree with you. I think that there were steps. I think that a lot of people expected things to progress quicker. What Ryan Day said last week was that they were going to make some changes, and they did. Matt Barnes, the secondary coach, called the defense. It's still a collaborative effort. It is every week, but he was the guy making the calls instead of Kerry Coombs. Kerry Coombs went from the sideline up to the box to help assist Matt Barnes that way. And even schematically on the field, you saw some more two safety looks. You saw some more cover two, some cover two man, things that Ohio State hasn't done much of the last couple of years. So there's certainly signs that they have evaluated things and are trying to change some things for the better. Now, there was also still a lot of the base defense, that single high safety, the hybrid linebacker, all that stuff. And I think you're going to need some time to transition a defense in the middle of the season. It's not something that can just happen overnight. This isn't a video game where you just change it up and it works, because these are real people and they've been working on one thing for a while. So it is going to take some time. So it was positive to see that there are changes happening, and what that will look like, we're going to have to wait and see. I think you made a good point about Davis Brin. Last week people were still critical of CJ Stroud, saying throwing 54 times was a reason for him getting 484 passing yards. Well, the same could be said in this situation. Now, the Buckeye pass defense wasn't great, especially over the middle. I think the two cornerbacks, true freshmen, Denzel Burke and fourth-year junior Cameron Brown, played pretty well, especially Burke. I thought the outside was more or less shut down. There were a couple plays hit there. It's that coverage over the middle, that safeties that's still concerning. He's running too far wide open, and I think that's where you saw the vast majority of the passing game for Tulsa really have an effect. So that's where I'm concerned still the most. And then I think the defensive line, there's just not enough pressure. this defense, any defense that's not going to blitz a ton, and Ohio State did blitz some more this week, but they trust that front four to get pressure on a quarterback, make him uncomfortable, sack the quarterback. And it's just not happening, and not happening enough. There were a couple moments, I think early in the third quarter, it looked like Ohio State was starting to get pressure, and I thought maybe they're wearing down the Tulsa offensive line, but then Bryn was able to sit back there and pick apart the defense a little bit, find his man, because there wasn't a lot in his face the rest of the game. So that's a major concern. I don't know if you're Ohio State, if you go away from some of the more veteran defensive linemen that aren't getting it done right now. Zach Harrison didn't play in this game, so you saw a bit more of JT Tuimalau, who had, I think, one pretty good pressure on the quarterback. Jack Sawyer got in there a little bit. Maybe you go with these guys a little bit more. You did see Tyleik Williams, the defensive tackle, get a sack, which was good to see. I think he was lined up next to JT Tuimalau on that play. So maybe you kind of roll with some of the younger kids at this point. Ohio State still has a lot of confidence in the defensive linemen who are playing, but at some point that confidence has to turn into production. And a lot of these guys have played a lot of snaps. And aside from Haskell Garrett, who hasn't been great this year, but obviously was last year, there's just not enough production right now. And that's hurting the rest of the defense and allowing quarterbacks to have too much time to throw.
Pat, let's talk about a bright spot. Too much criticism going around, my goodness, concerning this team. And we'll get to maybe some narratives after we talk Travion Henderson, because the offensive line is always going to be a huge factor in somebody having a historic day. So on one hand, he's running through gaping holes. On the other hand, he's juking guys in the secondary. He's breaking tackles. He's turning 12-yard runs into 50-yard runs and 5-yard runs into 15-yard runs. It was just tremendous from a back that we and Ohio State fans anticipated wanting to see, but thinking 8 to 10 carries early in the season, and maybe he'll be the main guy by the end of the line. But here he is in game 3, and he's a star.
It was a great performance from Travion Henderson. Broke Archie Griffin's freshman single game rushing record, which has stood since 1972, and did it on a 54-yard run. You saw the explosive playmaking ability that this kid has. And you mentioned the offensive line. They did a very good job run blocking, which was an issue a week ago against Oregon. I do think some of that had to do with what I talked about earlier with Tulsa's defense and dropping. But, when he got into the second level, Henderson I'm talking about, you could see that he knows what to do. Obviously had some good blockers downfield, but that speed, that ability to make guys miss, that's something that the rest of the Ohio State running backs don't have. It was interesting. We finally saw Master Teague again, who we didn't see since the first half of the opening game. He got some run, but Mayan Williams disappeared this week. And Ryan Day said after the game, Mayan Williams was healthy, but that Travion got rolling. So it'll be interesting to see. This was Travion Henderson's first start of his college career. It'll be interesting to see if that continues and kind of how the other running backs carries break down. But yeah, Travion Henderson showed he's the best running back on this team, I think. And there's still things he needs to improve on. I think he can get a little bit better in the pass blocking, though I have been impressed with him as a true freshman doing that. I think he can still do better with those short yardage situations, though we did see him score at the goal line. Ryan Day said after the game, turning 3-4 into 5-6, and some of those where he's not always looking for the home run and just getting what you need in certain situations. But that comes with time. Right now he's a young player who wants to score touchdowns, and he had 3 of them on Saturday, 2 of them of 40 or more yards. And again, you can just see what made him the number 1 back in the country last year and why he's so explosive. And Ohio State needs that right now. This offense has not been balanced yet. I think if you can get Stroud settled down, especially early, and you have a guy like Travion Henderson, you mix in some of the other running backs. Now once Ohio State's offense starts to get a bit more balanced, I think you're going to see some big things out of them.
Travion Henderson, as Pat mentions, breaks Archie Griffin's record from something like 1972. He was one of the first classes that was able to, as a freshman, actually participate in varsity games against North Carolina. And then he moves past Keith Byers, who had that famous lost the shoe against Illinois down 24-0, ran for 274 against the Illini at the shoe. And Henderson runs for 277. So it's only Trey Sermon and Eddie George on the single game rushing list ahead of Travion Henderson in only his 3rd game.
Not bad company.
not bad company above and below at this point on the single game rushing record. Ohio State legends. Pat, my goodness, I get dozens, if not more than that, comments a day on Ohio State football. And when it goes bad, the comments increase, of course, because people are expecting everything to go well. And when I picked Ohio State to go 11-1 this year, I had tons of people call me an idiot because there was no way that this team could lose a game. They were 2 touchdowns better than everybody on the schedule. And now I'm an idiot because I picked them to go 11-1, and they're definitely going to lose 2 or 3 games. So the other thing about this is that a week ago Friday, I was hearing collectively from people that Ryan Day, one of the reasons why I didn't know what I was talking about is that Ryan Day was incapable of losing a regular season game or a Big Ten game. And now we are like 10 days later, and Ryan Day is suddenly like a marginal coach. He doesn't know what he's doing. Bring back Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer was so much better. And I just think people are all over the place when it comes to this football team and this program. These concerns, at least in my estimation, are valid. The concerns about the defense, the concerns about Stroud. Is he going to turn into an elite quarterback, or is this what he's going to be for his career? I think all of those are valid concerns. These issues are real, but at the same time, my goodness, we see close calls during Urban Meyer's tenure. His first couple seasons, they slipped by some marginal teams, but the end of the line, they were in good shape. And again, had we had this conversation after a week 2 loss against Virginia Tech in 2014, nobody was predicting a national championship. So I'm not saying that that's just automatically going to happen. It's going to take fixing issues and a lot of work for them to get to where they need to be. People see Penn State and Iowa and other teams succeeding in the Big Ten. Like how concerned do you think people should be versus, people are talking about the program falling apart and being a 3-loss program for years to come, and recruits are going to start turning away. I just hear all sorts of crazy stuff.
Sure. And fans are going to be fans. I think that, it's a win. It's a love-hate situation. When things are going well, everybody's excited. And when they quickly don't, especially as you mentioned at the beginning of this, college football is a short season. You can't take a lot of losses. It's not like Major League Baseball or the NBA. So, there's quickly a move to panic mode, and I get that. But I think that what we probably should have talked about more coming into the season with this team was it was a young team at a lot of positions, probably more than we even expected when they finally took the field. And there's also a lot of inexperience. Even some of the veteran guys that have been in the program, I think of a guy like Taraja Mitchell at linebacker, hadn't played a lot of football. And, you just expected a place like Ohio State, similar with a place like Clemson, like Alabama, that guys will just step in and the old expression, you don't rebuild, you reload. And I think that's been true for Ohio State for a long time. And sometimes you get a year where that's not as much the case. And we'll have to wait and see how the rest of this year plays out. I still think that there's enough talent on this team that if they can get better and better each week, especially these weeks here where the challenge isn't as difficult, and they're going to have a handful of games where they're pretty heavily favored. So, you got to get better each and every week. You've got to continue to improve. And I think if you look around college football right now, aside from maybe Alabama, who, had their struggles a little bit more than a little bit against Florida, and Florida's a good team. I don't see, again, outside of Alabama, I don't see a juggernaut. I think that if you get into the college football playoff at the end of the year, then you have a chance. And even in the Big Ten, as good as Penn State looked on Saturday night against Auburn, I'm still not sure Auburn's a great team this year. And, I still think there's some things that Penn State's going to have to clean up. Iowa's got to get the offense going. Their defense is great right now. So I think it's a little bit early to panic. I do think that the Ohio State program is still in very good hands with Ryan Day. I think this is the first time he's faced some serious questions and really any adversity. I mean, losing to Clemson in the college football playoff 2 years ago, that was a lot of hate was put on the refs, on the team. Losing to Alabama last year, I think a lot of people understood what a weird season that was for the Buckeyes and how good that Alabama team was. So Ryan Day hasn't faced a lot of heat, and now questions are being asked. And this is part of the job when you're Ohio State's head coach. I think that he will come out the other end. Maybe they don't win the Big Ten this year, which I still think they are very much in line to do. But I think he's still building a very good program. And obviously, the first 2 years they had a lot of talent left over from the Urban Meyer reign, and they're continuing to add talent. The recruiting hasn't fallen off. So, I think it's not time to panic. And that they're going to be okay. I also want to point out that sometimes it takes a couple of years for these young players to develop. You look at Penn State and their quarterback situation with Sean Clifford, and I'm not comparing Sean Clifford and CJ Stroud in terms of talent, but all of a sudden Sean Clifford is playing really well for the Nittany Lions. You saw it on Saturday night, and it's just taken him some time. Not every quarterback, not every linebacker, defensive line, whatever the position is, steps in, even if they are highly recruited, steps in right away and is a star. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, and Ohio State may have more of those guys right now than they expected as well. So, I'm still very much on the Ryan Day train. I do think he deserves some of the criticism that's come his way, especially hiring of Kerry Coombs and forcing this defense upon some of these coaches that maybe didn't necessarily know that scheme as well. But I do think that they are working to get things fixed. I do think he's going to do what's best for the program, and I think ultimately they're going to be just fine.
I think it's going to be a fascinating race in the Big Ten because this is still by far, from a talent perspective, the best roster. Penn State's showing to be pretty much what they've been in the past, and they're back from a 4-5 campaign. Michigan's dominating opponents like they haven't. Now, those are opponents they should be dominating, but still just completely blowing teams out. And of course, on the other side, Iowa and Wisconsin are pretty much showing that they are who they are. And that's probably top 15 to 20 teams in the country, if not better than that. Interesting. All right. Pat Murphy, Bucknuts, 247 Sports. Pat, we appreciate you breaking things down. The information, the insights, exceptional. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Anytime.